to page 9. So you do have on the left side is Ruto's take, and you'll be taking a look at how that will be on your screens a little bit later on. So on Ruto's take, Azimio leaders are insincere and want to get into the government through the back door. So he is willing to hold talks with anyone who has the interest of the nation at heart. They do have it on your screens, and he has a plan that will lower the cost of living, but it takes time to implement. That is Ruto's take. On the right side is Raila's axe. Cost of living. Azimio is pushing for lowering of the cost of food, fuel and electricity. Electrical justice. They are fighting the reconstitution of IEBC, saying the president is acting unilaterally. Inclusive government. They say the president is promoting tribalism through appointments. And as I told you, that story is extensive from page 6 to page 9. Still on the front page, above there, page 4. Cabinet allows state farms sell without members of parliament. And on page 10, Uhuru team loaded Telkom debt on citizens. Quite a big story still developing. The whole ghosts that have come to haunt Telkom. And on page 21, Kihika faces jail term over CEC jobs. That story is on page 21. And on page, still on the front page, on the left side now, little to smile about on World Water Day. And remember, yesterday was World Forest Day. Hope you're still planting more trees, even as the government targets to plant millions of trees by 2030. Right, on page 3, police may soon sniff your vehicle for emission levels. An interesting story, you can take a look at there. So it gives you some details and some statistics. You can take a look at there. 36 average road accidents per day. 286 billion shillings, that is the cost of road accidents per year. 55 deaths per 10,000 vehicles in Kenya compared to 41, 22 and 1.6 in Botswana, South Africa and UK. And 30 to 40, this is times higher deaths from bad accidents than malaria and HIV and AIDS. Now on page 4, something on the corridors of the parliament. Cabinet clears the way for selling of paracetamols as MP denied say. So privatization bill 2023 allows Treasury to privatize public enterprises without Parliament's approval. And Cabinet approves a restructure of debt services obligations for the Aror, Kimorer dams and Itara dams. Yes, you can take a look at that story there. Away from matters, MPs, Raila calls for demos on Monday and Thursday. The second phase of the Azimio anti-government protests. So Azimio leaders urge supporters to boycott Safaricom, KCB, Bank and Radio Africa, and specifically and especially the Star newspaper. And I believe even yesterday, the Star wrote a whole piece just to saying why will you want to interfere with the independency of media. So we do have that story on page 7. We'll be taking a look at that a little bit later on the newspaper review with the guests when they do arrive. On page 6, Ruto Raila renew war for hustlers. So Raila wants Ruto to lower the cost of living and return subsidies to caution the poor, while Azimio accuses the president of neglecting the hustlers whom he promised to protect. And away from matters Ruto versus Raila, on page 8, how Monday's street protests left losses and tears in its wake. And speaking of matters leaving losses and tears, we'll be taking a look at the security matrix, and mostly on Monday, how the unrest quite affected, injuries were seen and arrests were done and loss of lives. And specifically, the Maseno University student that we actually saw yesterday. We'll be taking a look at how impartial were the police during the Azimio protests Monday, and how the relationship between the police and the citizens so far is. So how Monday's street protests left losses and tears in its wake. In Tasi and Bakasi, youths raided a supermarket and stole goods worth 15 million Kenyan shillings. And with more protests expected, the business community fears they could face more losses. This is one thing that we were discussing yesterday with the guests. Speaking numbers, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua talked about, claimed that we did lose 2 billion Kenyan shillings during the Azimio protests on Monday. So if henceforth we're going to have Mondays and Thursdays for the protests, how much are we going to be losing, and how will the business community have to change tact and prevent most of these particular losses? And the story that I'm talking about on page 8 below there, students condemn death of colleague as IPOA kicks off probe. So just the first paragraph of this particular article, university students have condemned the killing of their colleague on Monday during the Azimio demonstrations in Kisumu. We'll be diving into that later on, speaking about matters in security, speaking about matters, the security matrix in the country, and how each and every shareholder and stakeholder has to play a part in all of this. Lastly, on the Standard, page 10, Telkom Kenya owes billions to regulator, Safaricom MPs told. So Njoroge Chiloba appear before parliamentary committee. Yatani and Mushiru will also be grilled by members of parliament. And we'll be keeping you up to speed right here at TV47 to tell you what is happening. On the Daily Nation, Raila steps up onslaught against Ruto. So the related stories that are inside this on the same, arrest Raila, President allies tell police. That story is on page 5. And a mother's heartbreak as son is shot dead by police. On page 6, businesses count losses after day of protest. That is on page 7. So upping the ante. Opposition leader Raila Odinga yesterday announced mass action twice a week, even as he made a fresh demand for the reinstatement of 4 independent electoral and boundaries commission bosses were forced out and accused police of brutality during Monday's protests. We can take a look at that on page 4. But then, away from matters, the protests and demonstrations, on the corridors of justice on the right side of the front page of Daily Nation, I am the victim here. Maxine tells the court Assad was abusive, and this is developing a story on the corridors of justice. That is amateur rally driver Maxine Wahome, who was at the Milimani Courts for her bail hearing yesterday. So that story is on page 3. Let's take a look at what is happening on page 2. And this is one particular story that has caused and raised eyebrows among netizens in the country. Ruto, Rigathi, Mudavadi get 802 million shillings for new cars. Right, quite interesting in the country that we do live in. The total budget for the top government offices' cars more than doubles to 2.06 billion shillings. So let me take a look at the numbers in there inset. So allocation for purchase of motor vehicles in million shillings. The debt. President William Ruto, the initial debt, or rather the president's office, the initial budget was 100 million shillings. The new budget, 431.40 million shillings. The deputy president, 90.81 million shillings. The new budget, 290. That's nearly, I think, more than 200%, give or take, to 290.81. The Prime Cabinet Secretary does not give a number, but then the new budget is 80 million shillings. Others, 709.48 million shillings. That was the initial budget. Right now, 1,260, I believe, 0.0 million shillings. And now, which brings actually the whole total to 810. This is according to the Treasury. So on page 5, another story we'll be taking a look at. Sees Raila over chaos, Ruto allies tell police. This is the Kenya Kwanza leaders and politicians who was speaking yesterday. So politicians in rival Kenya Kwanza and Azimio traded accusations over who should take responsibility for the chaos. And indeed, something we were discussing yesterday, at the end of the day, someone has to take responsibility and accountability. So the buck stops with Mr. Odinga. He, in quotes, Inspector General of Police should go for him, and if he has sponsors, he should go for them as well. This is a quote by Kimani Ichung'wah. So yeah, do have that particular give and take by members of parliament and also senators from Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. On page 6, real quick on this particular story, the Maseno story, a mother's heartbreak. Her son is shot dead by police. So the mother says, I was shocked by the news. At first, they lied to me that my son was still alive, only to reach the hospital and find him lying dead. That is William Mayenga was her firstborn son and was the only fatality of the violent protests. Let me take a look at what is happening on the People Daily before we get to what is happening and what is trending today and in the past 24 hours. On the front page of the People Daily, MPs give 385 billion shillings as county's share. So let me take a just to actually, right, just a minute. Okay, they do have it. So Ruto cabinet clears a way for sale of parastatals. This story is on page 3. So the revenue allocation, although devolved unit owes 156 billion shillings in pending bills, National Assembly has offered them 40 billion shillings, less than what they had asked for, leaving their fate in the hands of senators who will make or break the deal. That story is on page 4, as you can see on the screens. And can also take a look at Ruto cabinet clears way for sale of parastatals on page 3. And away from matters politics, activist seeks to slam brakes on blotted Ruto CIS's hiring drive. This story is on page 8. The whole developing story matters. The chief administrative secretaries who were appointed last week, about 50 of them. So this is a whole developing story. UK-based Kenyan citizen wants to block the creation of 27 more positions named by the president last week. Remember, the president had approved only about 23 names, if I'm not wrong, and chief administrative secretaries, but then other 27 were added, giving the whole list to 50. And quite notable names there were losers in the 2022 general elections, and they do have it. You can take a look at all of these particular stories in the Daily Nation, the Standard, and the People Daily. We'll be having a more detailed newspaper review with the guests a little bit later on, but then let's take a look at what is trending right now. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua sent out an appeal to partners for support in scaling up the school feeding program as the drought response kitty received a shot in the arm. Speaking at the port of Mombasa, when he received 25,000 metric tons of wheat and 16,000 metric tons of sorghum from Ukraine, Gachagua spoke of an urgent need for more support to the school meals program to help keep children from drought and famine-affected areas in school. The World Food Program handed over the school meal program to the government in 2018, but with a prolonged drought, the longest in 40 years,
The donation we flag off today is a shot in the arm when at least 5.4 million Kenyans are facing starvation. We have also lost more than 2.6 million livestock. Children under 5 years are expectant and lactating mothers face malnutrition. Millions of lives and livelihoods are at stake. With this delivery in a few days, that one expectant mother in Turkana or Tana River will have food in her plate. We need to put a little bit more effort to the schools through the feeding program for the schools so that we can keep our children in school. There are counties in non-ASAL areas that are facing difficult situations similar to what is happening in these counties. We have some areas in the counties of Nyeri, counties of Kiambu, counties of Murang'a, the county of Migori, where we have pockets that have similar climatic conditions as in those ASAL counties. So we'll be making a request to the World Food Programme to consider non-traditional, non-ASAL areas that have not been receiving support from the World Food Programme to be considered, because the people in those counties are saving similar conditions and they are also facing hunger and starvation.
And as the world marks International Forest Day, Kenya Forest Conservers in Bungoma branch have warned over river encroaches and foresters, especially from the sources of water, in a bid to curb climate change in the country. They have stated that illegal occupants will face the wrath of the law. A reporter, Sostin Wanji, has compiled the following report from various counties.
The Mount Elgon region serves as a critical water source for both the western parts of Kenya and the eastern parts of Uganda. And as the world marks World Forest Day, the Bungoma branch of the Kenya Forest Conservers has issued a warning against encroaching on water sources and deforestation in the Mount Elgon region.
They need to protect it at all costs. We also are having the issues of rehabilitating areas that are degraded. What we've just said is just part of it. But you need a long program which may take 5 years or more, so that the whole forest is protected. We are also upping up our games in issues of protection. We are really enforcing.
During the day's events, which included the planting of over 5,000 seedlings in Bungoma County to meet President William Ruto's target of planting 15 billion trees in 10 years, environmental stakeholders emphasized that tree planting is crucial to combat the effects of climate change in Kenya.
We've been urged to improve on our tree cover so that we get lots of rains, given that as a country we are having adverse effects of climate change.
We have a bigger program to plant Mount Elgon. We have more than 100 hectares.
Hatuna nurseries za kutosha within the county.
In Kakamega County, forest conservers partnered with the Kabarase rugby team and locals to plant over 1,000 trees.
His Excellency the President has set the tone. We must all plant trees, 10 billion within 10 years.
We are trying to empower the women on the cultural aspect that they can also be part of conserving the forest, because when it comes to looking for firewood, looking for water, it is the women.
I believe that by planting a tree, we are creating a better tomorrow and a better environment tomorrow.
In the future, we can actually come and say that we were part and parcel of assisting in this global crisis that we are having and the ecosystem that is currently happening.
Elsewhere in Nyamira County, Kenya Forest Service officers together with other stakeholders followed suit in the celebrations, urging residents to stop planting eucalyptus trees along river banks.
People have really planted trees, but unfortunately they have planted eucalyptus mainly. We don't want to stop planting of eucalyptus, but we want to encourage planting of these tree species on the right places, like hilltops and not on wetlands.
The Nyamira South Deputy County Commissioner Florence Obunga directed all chiefs to produce 2,000 seedlings to ensure that enough trees are planted.
We have instructed all our chiefs and assistant chiefs to ensure that they establish tree nurseries at the locational level.
Wanji Sostin, TV47.
It is now 5 years since more than 100 Cuban doctors jetted into the country in what was described as a move to fill gaps in county hospitals through a health agreement signed by the Cuban government and the Ministry of Health. And as Elizabeth Atieno now reports, the arrival of the Cuban doctors have caused jitters in the health sector as local health practitioners continue to oppose the move, saying it will be a huge disadvantage to thousands of Kenyan doctors who remain unemployed.
In 2018, the first batch of Cuban doctors, including 53 family doctors and 47 specialists, touched down in Nairobi from Havana. The doctors came as a request from county governments in a 2-year contract. Things took a fresh twist in February 2023 after the Council of Governors demanded a review of the deal that brought 120 Cuban doctors to Kenya amidst claims that the government is spending millions of shillings every month in salaries and hospitality costs for the medics who are alleged to not giving a proper return of investment.
So in essence, the whole project of the Cuba and the Kenya agreement is not really beneficial to the country. It's more of a use of the taxpayers' money in a cause that was more of a PR than any benefits. And therefore, our recommendations as a union is that since the project is coming to an end, there's no need to have it renewed. The funds that were in that project, and ideally, as you said earlier, the 4.4% of the budget that the ministry have, they're able to really flex and do many of these particular projects. That money should be factored into employment of the Kenyans who are unemployed and who are specialists.
The Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union now maintains that the admission of Cuban doctors into the country have jeopardized the employment of local doctors and is a looming scandal in the country.
So as a union, we have maintained a stand on this, and we believe that it was a particular corruption deal that are yet to be unraveled as time goes, and we will ask the committee to actually ask for an audit report on a cost value analysis of the coming of the Cuban doctors between that period and to date. What value has it brought to the country, and what extent and what amounts has the country spent on the same?
According to the deal signed between Kenya and Cuba through the famous Nairobi-Havana Agreement, the doctors were to be offered security, furnished homes, airfare for holidays, paid utilities and transport on top of their salaries. The county governments where the doctors were deployed were responsible for providing accommodation, furniture, kitchen tools, electricity, water and cooking gas for each of the doctors.
We also have 50 of the Kenyan doctors that were taken for exchange programs to Cuba. And the reports that we have as a union is that a number of them actually dropped from the program. They could not complete the program because they were under deplorable conditions, to the point that we have one doctor who even lost his life. He lost his life out of the frustrations that was there in Cuba for that period of time.
Every county got at least 2 specialists, thereby cushioning regions like Mandera, Vihiga, Marsabit and Wajir, which had no specialist before the Cubans. Another cohort of 20 specialized doctors in the Department of Internal Medicine, Oncology, Cardiology and Pediatrics arrived in July 2020 to strengthen the fight against COVID-19. However, reports from KMPDU reveal that only a maximum of 5 local doctors have been employed in different counties in the past 5 years.
We have trained family physicians in the country, and the course is being offered by about 5 universities: Moi University, Maseno University, KU University. We also have Aga Khan offering these courses, and they have a greater understanding of the disease pattern in the country. But while these Cubans were being brought, we had over 100 of family specialists in the country who have not been employed.
The national government is committed to paying each of the doctors a monthly stipend of 125,000 Kenyan shillings. In addition, the Cuban doctors are insured under the Public Service Commission and enjoy comprehensive medical insurance coverage under the National Health Insurance Fund.
A shortage of oncologists in this country. And last year, we have about 4 of them who graduated from Alexandria, but they could not be employed. So that is our presentations on this issue of the Cuban, because we had gone to court over it, but then it did not work at that time.
KMPDU was speaking before the Senate Health Committee, which brought together other stakeholders in the health sector and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Elizabeth Atieno, TV47, Nairobi.
Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza has praised the action of the Meru County Assembly of approving all CECs after the 2 parties agreed to work together. This follows a long tussle that had threatened to bring services at the county to a halt. John Javakiania reports.
Following Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza's reconciliation with the county ward representatives who had been in political tension for over 5 months, the unity between the 2 camps has brought some sort of success. The Meru County Assembly approved all 14 nominees for the position of county chief officers and county executive committee members who were appointed by the governor. 5 months ago, the governor faced fierce opposition from MCAs after the County Assembly's committee failed to approve 7 of the 10 CECs proposed by the governor.
And I want to confirm that we have approved the 7 CEC nominees whom were forwarded to the Assembly by the governor, and also 7 chief officers. Awaiting the rest because the governor only forwarded 7 names of the chief officers.
We expect when we shall have queries and we want to ask them questions, they shall avail themselves to the assembly. They don't need to wait us to summon them strongly. They don't need to wait for us even to complain that they are not responding to our letters from the county assembly.
During the swearing-in ceremony of the approved members, Governor Mwangaza congratulated the nominees who are now substantive orders of their respective offices. She urged for the peace that was witnessed at the moment to continue in order to facilitate the effectiveness of our agenda for the people.
We will be expecting monthly reports from every waziri and every chief officer. Amefanya nini Meru County kwa ofisi yake. Hapa si mchezo, umefurahia kupata kazi lakini mbio itakuwa mwendo wa kasi sana. Speed yetu hapa ni 400 km/h. Kwa hivyo tutakimbia na tutakimbia kimaendeleo. Bwana asifiwe.
The approved nominees whom we spoke to expressed their happiness while promising better performance in their new roles.
We have problems of poor info last 2-3 years. So in my best interest to see to it that in the Department of Agriculture that we introduce smart agriculture where we can be able to solve the problems of drought.
For the vocational training institutes, we have challenges because again those institutions, they do not have the right equipment, they do not have enough staff, and those are some of the challenges we are going to look into and see the budget that's available to support us do that.
Governor Kawira Mwangaza had been engaged in a tough war with the MCA since assuming office, which culminated in an attempt by the members of the County Assembly to remove her from office, a decision that lacked approval from the Senate. John Javakiania, TV 47, Meru County.
We have started the journey of Kabati, Kaende in a very serious way.
And as the probe into the irregular payment of the 6 billion shillings in the Telkom saga intensifies, Telkom Board Chair Edward Njoroge now reveals that the Board of Telkom was not properly constituted during the buying of shares. The revelation raising questions on the legality of the multi-billion transaction, as Andrian Kilemi now reports.
Telkom Board Chair Edward Njoroge has told the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Finance and Communications that no money was paid out by the company in the 6.1 billion shillings saga that is being probed.
If this acquisition...
Appearing before the committee Tuesday, Njoroge said the board of Telkom was sidelined and that it was not privy to any transactions.
I am not a representative of Jamhuri Holdings. And if you really want to get Jamhuri Holdings, you have their contacts, you should get them to come here, Mr. Chairman.
The telecommunications chair further revealed that the board of Telkom was not properly constituted. When Telkom bought shares from Jamhuri Holdings Limited, the revelation opened a can of worms, with the committee questioning the legality of the multi-billion transaction.
Kama mtu amekuajiri kasi, utaenda ufanye kasi kama mtu kibinafsi ama utafanya kasi kulingana na matakwa ya yule ambaye amekuajiri? Kulingana na mimi naona ni kana kwamba ule ambaye ameletwa hapa chairman mwenyekiti wa Telkom anatudanganya.
What are you reporting in your books of accounts as far as equity statement is concerned?
Those loans are still being carried there because Telkom has not repaid those loans. Okay, so if the shareholders within themselves have assigned or moved the obligations under the loans between themselves, as far as Telkom Kenya is concerned, those loans are still on our balance sheet.
He, however, defended himself, saying that he did not receive a penny from the 6 billion shillings in question.
This is not unusual. I'm in the board, as I said, of many companies where I'm independent board member and I don't represent the interests of those who either nominate me into the board. And that's the way good governance runs.
Their committee is tomorrow expected to summon key government officials, including former Cabinet Secretary Kuria Tani, who Telkom's board chair says forced him to resign before the 6 billion scandal occurred. Andrin Kilemi, TV 47.
Following the recent Azimio protests, a cat-and-mouse game ensued, with the protesters and law enforcement engaging in a back and forth. And now Azimio party leader Raila Odinga has declared that there will be weekly protests every Monday and Thursday, leaving some Kenyans fearful of the impact on their livelihoods and their children's education. Reporter Ronnie Regan with the story.
Nairobi, a usually busy city, was deserted yesterday as the protests that were witnessed on Monday disrupted business and even transport. Many Kenyans had a hard time at the hands of the police, who were mandated with ensuring that there is peace and calm throughout the country.
Jana, kulingana na maandamano iliyomo siku ya jana, iliweza kusababisha biashara yetu. Kwa maana mahali unaponiona tunakuanga wengi, hatukuwa tumetokea tukia wengi.
The capital is coming back to life, but many residents of it, and especially the traders in the city, have now complained about the loss of income following yesterday's protest.
Mimi ni mfanyi biashara hapa Tirum, na mimi nafanya kazi ya bodaboda, na mimi ni mmoja wapo wa hustler. Hakika hustler tumekuwa na hali ngumu ya kimaisha. Imekuta mahali mpaka chakula imekuwa ngumu katika kuwekelea kwa meza.
Kenyans have had conflicting feelings following yesterday's protest, with some supporting and others feeling that the economy will be affected a lot, especially after Odinga now said that the protest will be held every Monday and Thursday.
Na hii kazi yetu nimeifanya kwa miaka nyingi, lakini huwezi kosa 1000 kama 2 hivi. Lakini kulingana siku ya jana sikuzipata kwa sababu ya mafulugu, ilisababisha hata watu wengi wako kuingia katika kwenye mji.
Siku ya jana nilipoteza kazi kubwa sana, juu nilitengeneza shilingi 100 kutoka asubuhi mpaka jioni. Na jana mimi huwa kila siku huwa natengeneza kuanzia shilingi 1000.
President William Ruto has maintained a hard stance and said that his government will not participate in any handshake with opposition like the previous governments did, but some Kenyans have a different feeling.
Kwangu mimi jana nilienda hasara, na inaamini ya kwamba kukiwa na amani na makubaliano na maelewano, biashara itaweza kuendelea vizuri.
One of the big concerns is now education, which will be affected if Raila Odinga's demands are not met.
Na tunasema kama ni Raila na president wetu Ruto waende wapingane huko, wakutane kwa ofisi, na yale watakayokubaliana waachane na sisi watu wale wanapiga hasla, waendelee na kuhaso.
Mimi nakaaga hapa kama msukumaji wa troli. Mimi sijasona ubaya wa maandamano, kwa maana hata uchaguzi ya last year tulifika mpaka Kasarani, tukaweza kuenda kwa mkutano na tukaona kwamba baba walimuiba kura, na tuogopi kuendelea na mbele na maandamano hata Jumatatu wengine tuko tayari kuendelea na mbele na maandamano kabisa, na kukabiliana na serikali ikijaribu kabiliana na sisi wananchi.
If President William Ruto does not engage Azimio leader Raila Odinga, then what will be the future of the nation?
The ongoing power struggle between Kenya Kwanza MPs and Azimio la Umoja remains at the forefront, with MPs loyal to President William Ruto accusing Raila Odinga of promoting anarchy and failing to present the grievances to State House. They claim that instead of pursuing diplomatic channels, Odinga chose to sabotage the country's economy through demonstrations. Meanwhile, Kenya Kwanza MPs have labelled Odinga's protest as a ploy to push for handshake between him and President William Ruto, inciting anger among their ranks. Paul Kirabe tells us more.
Following Raila Odinga's demonstrations in Nairobi, there have been mixed reactions and a blame game among legislators aligned with both sides of the political divide. Some lawmakers have labelled the move as a ploy to push for a handshake between President William Ruto and Raila Odinga, rather than fighting for the welfare of ordinary citizens, as stated in Raila's irreducible minimums.
The principal reasons offered by Mr. Odinga for organizing and implementing anarchy
on such a tremendous scale are the cost of living and the 2022 election, which claims was stolen. Yet as recently as June 2022, Mr. Odinga was the government's foremost defender, attributing the rising cost of living to factors beyond the government's control, which also affected other countries.
On the other hand, lawmakers allied to Azimio la Umoja have a different view and are insisting that the only way to put an end to the demonstrations is for the government to take action and reduce the cost of living.
There was no any protesters of Azimio who destroyed any businesses in Nairobi or anywhere else. I think this is something that is very important to note, because this is what the other side has been selling and to business community, that our protesters will destroy businesses.
It was every Kenyan who is now tired, who is hungry, and who knows that what is happening with this William Ruto administration is illegal.
Wewe ukitaka hii maandamano ikuishe, maneno ni fupi tu. Tangaza leo unga ni shilingi 70. Sasa hii tangaza ya kwamba IEBC will be recruited in a bipartisan manner. Tangaza ya kwamba sava itafunguliwa. Tangaza ya kwamba ile ngine umesema ni gani? Bei ya mafuta iko chini. Maneno fupi tu, kesho hakuna demonstration.
Kenya Kwanza leaders have accused Odinga of attempting to obstruct Ruto's government from addressing important issues such as investigations into those who embezzled public funds during the previous regime of former President Uhuru Kenyatta.
The violence, chaos, looting and destruction are also aimed at distracting the country from investigating the shameless siphoning of public funds, crimes against humanity perpetrated through extrajudicial killings and forced disappearances, abuse of office and state capture.
However, the Azimio la Umoja legislators remain firm in their stance that President William Ruto must meet the demands of the coalition for a better country, and there can be no way out for him otherwise.
We are in this until all our demands are met. And those demands will have to be met. And we are very clear on them. You open the server, you involve all stakeholders in the reconstitution of the IEBC, and you reduce the cost of living. Do those three things, and you will find Nairobi returning to normalcy and the rest of the country.
The tug of war between the two coalitions appear to have no end in sight unless leaders led by President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga engage with each other. Paul Kirobi, TV47, Nairobi.
And to a story that will form the backbone of our conversation this morning, Azimio leader Raila Odinga has vowed to take legal action against Nairobi Regional Police Commander Adamson Bungei and other senior police officers in both local and international courts for giving orders to the police to use excessive and brutal force against the protesters on Monday. The National Police Service has, however, released a statement criticizing the coalition for stating an illegal demonstration whose sole purpose was to invade State House. Zainab Mohammed with more.
Following yesterday's mass protest by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance, the party principal Raila Odinga has criticized the police for using excessive and brutal force against peaceful protesters. Raila, who has vowed to take legal action against Nairobi boss Adamson Bungei, has demanded for the immediate and unconditional release of those arrested during the protest.
Very unfortunately, during this otherwise peaceful process, many of the demonstrators got hurt, and at least 2 innocent Kenyans were killed in cold blood by the police. We pass our sincere condolences to the families that lost loved ones to the police brutality. We will stand with those families in all ways, including pursuing justice on behalf of their loved ones.
He says the party has put together a security and legal team that will be examining the police conduct during the protest, promising to institute legal action against individual police officers. Raila further criticized Independent Police Oversight Authority and the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights for their silence on the matter.
We were shocked that police could assemble so many personnel and so much equipment to confront peaceful protesters. That brutality witnessed yesterday does not belong to this country. It is the more disgusting because the citizens were acting within the provisions of the Constitution and were given notice of the intention to march on Nairobi. It is impunity at its worst. We were determined to confront it as they saw yesterday.
In response, the National Police Service has released a statement criticizing the coalition for staging an illegal demonstration whose purpose, the police say, was to invade State House. The statement says, and I quote, "The unwarranted day-long standoff that was witnessed in Nairobi and Kisumu yesterday amounts to nothing short of violence against the police and economic sabotage." End of quote. The statement further defends the police conduct yesterday, claiming that they handled the protesters with utmost respect of human rights. The statement says, and I quote, "In particular, officers used force gradually, beginning with the lowest threshold, which is show of force, and barely reinforced by water cannons and lobbing of tear gas canisters to prevent the protesters from accessing the central business district of Nairobi and Kisumu, as well as protected areas." End of quote. The police service, that has now welcomed external scrutiny by independent constitutional agencies, says a total of 7 officers were injured in Nyanza and 24 officers in Nairobi. A total of 25 people were arrested in Nyanza and 213 in Nairobi, whilst 10 police vehicles were damaged. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
Meanwhile, Maseno University students took to the streets on Tuesday to condemn the killing of their colleague William Mayenga, who was allegedly gunned down in an engagement between police and protesters during Monday's mass protest led by Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga. Gilbert Nalwa with the story.
Students from Maseno University took to streets on Tuesday to condemn the killing of their colleague William Mayenga, a third-year student who was allegedly shot dead in an engagement with the police on Monday during the mass protests witnessed in various parts of the country, including Kisumu and Nairobi counties. The students who engaged officers in running battles along the Kisumu-Busia road demanded that justice is served to the family, pointing an accusing finger to the police for using excessive force during the protests.
Comrades, Ria! Viva, comrades, viva! Viva, comrades, viva! I want to say this. What happened yesterday and what is happening in Maseno is uncalled for, uncouth. We cannot take it and we won't take it.
The mother to the deceased, Evelyn Miruka, expressed her bitterness for the loss of her firstborn son, William Mayenga, a third-year student at the university, whom she described as a kind-hearted son, and who was about to clear her studies. She condemned the police, accusing them of killing her son with no justified reason.
Sasa ninahuzunika sana, mtoto wangu firstborn kati ya Maseno. Nashangaa mtoto alifanya nini kuuawa? Mtoto wangu si bandi. Tunaongea kitu. Badala ya maskari kutulindia watoto tena wanaua. I've lost my child. My child was a third year in Maseno University. Here, he was to finish his course next year. Now this is the kind of graduation they are bringing me to.
In a statement issued by the Inspector General Japheth Koome, the police noted that a section of rioters invaded the Maseno police station on Monday, hurling stones on the officers and property, a scenario that led to the death of a male student. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority has now launched its investigations into the matter. Azimio leader Raila Odinga, while condemning the saga, called on IPOA and the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights to investigate the conduct of the police during the Monday's mass action protests.
Many of the demonstrators got hurt, and at least 2 innocent Kenyans were killed in cold blood by the police. We pass our sincere condolences to the families that lost loved ones to the police brutality. We will stand with those families in all ways, including pursuing justice on behalf of their loved ones.
Gilbert Nalwa, TV 47.
Azimio la Umoja One Kenya leader Raila Odinga has declared protests on Monday and Thursday weekly. The opposition chief has vowed to push the government in having the cost of basic commodities lowered and IEBC servers opened, insisting he won the August 2022 general election. Elizabeth Mutuku has more.
Just a day after Azimio mass protest in Nairobi, Azimio leader Raila Odinga has declared demos twice a week starting next week.
Second phase of our protests, in response to public demands, we shall now hold protests every Monday and every Thursday beginning next week. We call for the boycott of Safaricom, Kenya Commercial Bank, and Radio Africa Media, particularly the Star newspaper, who have become enablers and facilitators of this brutal regime.
Raila has vowed to lead protests until President William Ruto's government lowers the basic of commodities, allows the opening of IEBC servers for vote recount, and allows Azimio to participate in selection of IEBC chair and the commissioners.
We maintain that IEBC must open the servers and allow an independent international audit that will without doubt prove to Kenyans that brutal Ruto did not win the last elections.
Raila Odinga, in a company of Azimio la Umoja principals, addressed the media in Nairobi, called upon police to immediately release Azimio la Umoja supporters who were arrested on Monday, saying they were exercising their constitutional rights during the protest.
Phones are owned and hired by the government through their party UDA. The moment you see people saying, because the other side has given a notice for demonstration, we have a counter demonstration. That's euphemism that we will meet you with goons.
Odinga, in achieving his demonstration's ambitions, has urged his supporters to boycott products from Safaricom, KCB Bank, among other companies.
Who probably think that we also don't have rights. We have a right kugomea. Kugomea sio to act in isolation or anything. Absolutely not. What we are saying is fair reporting. But if you take a position, then Kenyans have also a position to take a contrary opinion.
Back and forth continues between the two political divides on the planned protest against the Kenya Kwanza government, even as the economy continues to receive beatings. The much awaited is to see who will blink first. Elizabeth Mutuko, TV 47 Pan Biddings, Nairobi.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth Mutuku, for that particular report. I want us to get into the conversation this particular morning, just taking a look at Kenya's security matrix, and we'll be diving into the aftermath of the Azimio protests and the relationship between the security forces and the citizens of this particular country. And after every single unrest, there is always a blame game. So today, this particular morning, we do have security experts, people who've been in the field, and being in the field, just give us, break it down for us. What does it really mean? And we'll be again talking about the joint security operation that is in the North Rift. Is it effective so far to flush out the bandits? You can always talk to us on our social media platforms below your screens. What is your input this particular morning? Real quick, let me introduce the gentleman with me today. On my left, immediate left, Dr. Nelson Chisero, Executive Director of the Kenya Veteran for Peace. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I hope you're well.
Well, thank you.
Okay. And in the middle, Byron Adera, Pioneer, ex-Special Forces and Security Expert. Good morning.
Morning to you. How are you doing?
Niko salama.
Asante.
All right. And extreme left, Robert Mbukua, the chair of the Kenya Veterans for Peace. Good morning, sir. University student. Break it down for us. when do police decide to use live bullets and rubber bullets? How does this process come to be, until we do have the death of a student?
Well, any security personnel in the stature of police officer in operation during peacetime or during wartime, there are roles that they have, and there are rules that guide them. So for the case of Monday, the police using the live bullet, we can say this: a police can use a live bullet when his life is in danger, or the life of the students, the citizens that he or she took hold of the nation that he is operating under to protect when he is in danger. So for the case of this student, we are ahead because the process is on of investigating with the constitutional mandated commission to investigate whether it was a stray bullet or it was a direct bullet directed to the head. So if it will happen that in this particular case, the officer who shot the live bullet to that student, it was a direct bullet, then all the superior authority and constitutional institutions will hold that officer, particular officer, wrong side of the law. But if it was a true bullet, then other dimensions will take over. That's my take.
All right, Adera can bring on this. Are there instances in the field that an officer will act unilaterally, or because I mean, let's say on a head count, even in Kibra where I was, you'd probably find maybe 15 officers there, maybe 15 GSU officers there. Will they have to wait for for the command until they do act, or in some instances they'll act unilaterally and decide, no, personally I'm going to maybe run for this?
Well, thank you for the interesting question. As has been said here, well, the whole activity of policing is a very high reliability affair. And in situations where lives are concerned, both for the operators and the people that we are safeguarding, those are decisions that you expect to be, meet a certain threshold that would require, in most cases, that a person acts on the altar of the professionalism and best judgment, as those situations pretty much dictate. You cannot hang around, goofing off, duty when your life is threatened, and that's what's been said here. So when there's a direct threat to the life of an officer, you'd expect them not to waste a second to pretty much wire that information up and ask for permission to do something. Mm-hmm. But ideally, that is basically founded on the training, rules of engagement. So there's a certain set of operational commands that people are reading off. There's the briefs that have been given by the time people are leaving the base to actually attend to a particular situation. You would expect those things to be kicking in. You expect the processes, the whole sum total, the background process that are taking place to produce this particular individual, as a police officer or a security operator, for that matter, that they act in the best interest of their training and professionalism. So there's all these backgrounds to them that ideally would inform the way you deliver. So outcomes thereof. In cases where you expect people to go contrary to the dictates of their professionalism and of course operational orders or set pieces of briefs that have been given before they actually ushered into the theater, then due process is followed, as it's been intimated to right here in terms of investigations. There's bodies in this country that are charged with those kind of investigations. We may be speculating unless, of course, we have the fullness of knowledge of how the investigations are going to pan out or the outcome of the same. But ideally, I would say that we may be looking at situations where, yes, individuals are acting in the best interest of the operation or missions that have been given, but there's obviously some others that may not be living up to those standards. And then you have excesses, you have some situations where lives are lost that do not need to actually be lost in very, cheap, so to speak, circumstances that we've had to witness in the past.
Dr. and before we actually get to the Zimmer protests, just for the viewers, what goes in the mind of security operators in the field at that time? Maybe in a head count, maybe of 5 of you. And I mean, we did see videos. I think it was in Kisumu, where some police officers actually had to cross over a wall. What goes in the mind of a security operator at that time? And because I'm pretty sure in the training, you also taught how to maybe read the mind of the crowd in front of you and, assess the situation. But then what goes in the mind of those police officers at that time?
Well, thank you very much this morning, and I appreciate the other speakers who came before me. There's a very thin line between what you call the operation instructions and what is actually on the field. Any Kenyan of standing mind will understand there's a very thin line between when the life is threatened and when actually there's excess. There are cases that have been reported historically. For example, Baby Pendo. Remember the story of Baby Pendo previously. How was Baby Pendo threat to any police officer, for example? That would be a question. Was it a stray bullet? Well, I don't know how far the investigations went. But generally speaking, it will depend on the person in the capacity of a police officer out there in the field. The judgment that he or she makes would rely purely on the environment around or surrounding the person. But again, a live bullet being used in these demonstrations does not encourage peaceful coexistence between the police and the public. I would think if there would be no death at all, that would be very good. Yeah.
Mbukua, on Saturday, you had a press statement in Nairobi, and you're urging the Azimio la Umoja coalition leaders to hold peaceful demonstrations. First of all, I don't know how, maybe on your end, how peaceful they were, but then do you feel disappointed that at the aftermath, we're looking at the newspapers and you're seeing injuries and deaths and property looted?
Thank you very much. Let's start from Saturday to correct. It's very expensive. It's very cheap to make a mistake. Very expensive to correct a mistake. In our statement on Saturday, basically we were urging the Azimio team led by Premier Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga to look for other avenues of settling the issues that they have raised with this team, which to them they are valid, and which to them they are right before them. So we did not tell them to hold peaceful demonstrations. Okay. In our statement, we cannot break the law. Picketing, demonstrations is a right to all Kenyan citizens. If they were to hold, of which they did, it was supposed to be peaceful and according to the law. The police had issued a statement that the due process wasn't followed. So for the case of Monday, they were supposed to report to the police or inform the police 72 hours before. And the inspector, the regional police commander, Mr. Bugay, had stated very clear that they were not prepared for this. And because they have had pre-exchange, that the due process was not followed, he said they are going to meet the full force of the law. So that's why the Azimio team had planned for a peaceful demonstration, as they said. But on the other side, the police had declared the demonstration was illegal. That is where the rubber met the road. So the police were prepared to confront them. That's what said there was confrontation. And that's why we said, even the president has said, if they are going to hold demonstrations, which is their right, they have to arrange with the police who are constitutionally mandated to provide security for such a case, both to the property and the people and even demonstrators. Now that this one did not happen, that's why you see the whole confusion came. Okay, the demonstration went ahead, but because of some few technicalities and some few issues which were not considered, which if we will be asked to advise by both parties, and especially on the side of demonstrators, we will help them, and that's why we are here. No one is above the law. The law protects both the police, all security organs and bodies, protects the citizens, and in this case, special case, also there's the mere organizers of the demonstrations and the demonstrators. And that's why you see the whole confusion is. So what we are saying is that the whole process, the law was breached.
Adira, he raises an interesting point of the preparedness, and even as much as, you know, regional police commander in Nairobi said, Adamson Bungei said that, you know, you did not tell us about these demonstrations earlier. So the whole issue of preparedness, how much does it affect on what we actually saw on Monday? Because I can attest that even during the whole, you know, running battles with the protesters and the police, you'll hear some police officers saying, we don't really have enough tear gas here, we need to go and, you know, reload. Is it something that does happen during, you know, during the field, or is it a matter of unpreparedness on the police?
Well, the jury is still out on what you're saying as to whether the police do not have enough tear gas or not. And again, I'm not really privy to the assertions that the police were not 100% prepared for this demonstration. Neither can I speak to the fact that there wasn't sufficient notice that was given into the police. I'm privy to the dictates of law and what the Constitution says, 2010, that provides for, you know, picketing, that you and I can pretty much picket because of dissatisfaction with what's happening around me, where I live, or with the country, or about my MCA. But, you know, the way the society is actually organized and the delivery of outcomes within that setup. So that said, to speak for both sides, the demonstrators say one thing. Obviously, we don't have sufficient facts. We haven't been given the notice that allegedly was taken to the police. And if there was sufficient time, the law actually says you notify. But of course, the law does not say that you actually have to be given express permission by the police right about now. That is something that had been, you know, buried in the graveyard of abandoned, you know, laws that have had to serve this country because of excesses that were seen in the past. So we were to grow forward or roll forwards as a society. But of course, that said, in terms of preparedness, you know, we got a history, and I remember something that you can mirror this, you know, and reflect, shine a light on. In 2017, when we had almost a similar, you know, face-off between the demonstrators and the police. And you remember when the infamous homecoming by the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, the JKI 2017. And there was a bit of a pushback, and there was almost a similar kind of arrangement on the part of the police. The water guns were out, there was loads and loads of policemen in the streets. And there was a pushback all the way to through the CBD and onto the Uhuru Park, I remember. And you can say that that again is something that almost caught the police pants down. And against that backdrop, we had an interview, I remember, at the NTV, and it came hot in the heels of a report that had just been released by World Internal Security and Police Index in conjunction with Internal Institute of Economics and Policy, IEP, and which ideally back in at that time, 2017, did rank our police as third worst in the world, where a number of countries were actually considered around some streams, processes, capacity, and legitimacy, and of course outcomes by these bodies, independent institutes. We beat Uganda, luckily, and we beat Nigeria, but according to that report. Same report did put Rwanda, as second best in Africa, and of course Botswana, the best police, organization in Africa, 47th best in the whole world, 50 best in the whole world. Respectively. Okay. But that said, what I said on national TV at that time was that that was a huge indictment, because coming from an independent body, that says we are looking at all these 4 parameters where we're thinking processes, we're thinking capacity, we're thinking outcomes and legitimacy. And they say you are third worst in the world. I said, and there was a bit of talks here and there, but I said, this is something that you should take with a pinch of salt, and of course with a level of seriousness, if you may. Okay. That is an indictment on how you actually do your business. And I'm happy, right here where I sit, that I've had to relate with a lot of our brothers in the National Police Service, and there's quite a number of individuals that are professional and that do their jobs exceptionally well.
Do you think we've grown? I mean,
yes,
looking back to 2017.
Yeah, absolutely, we have had to grow. The gap has been bridged over time. You hear of citizenry that are a lot more closer to the police, and that's what we'd want, because a lot of things that happen in the society just need us to work together. When we connect, great things actually do happen. But that said, we should not plow back, we should not grind backwards. We should actually be adding more points, forwards. Yeah. So the question around how we conduct business in terms of even the preparedness, which is part of that, the abilities thereof that this indictment, harsh indictment on our National Police Service did speak to, really need to be looked at very, very carefully. And if you may, we are not acting in a vacuum, right? We're in a country, and Kenya is our business, Kenya is our project, right? And so a lot of these things, we have had the benefit of history and historical occurrences that have had to actually come into the equation, and some outcomes have had to be really, really bad for us. Lives lost, property being destroyed, are not things that you can have. So if you're a professional outfit, just like any business or even individual as you are, if there's something that's constantly knocks your head when you're leaving your house because something came off the door, you will repair it. So we have space and time to do business better, or to use experiences that we've had to have in the society to actually be better managers of the human affairs. Crowd dynamics, as you asked earlier, pretty dynamic stuff. Yeah. And the level of consciousness with the way things happen and the level of experiences we've had to have in the past are able to inform how as to how we do business going forward. Plow in psychologically right measures, even strategies, and chances are, and literally I would speak to some of the things that we've been seeing floating on social media. There was a situation in Migori where the police were, took a little break and they're washing their faces. It said washing their eyes, but I think washing their faces because of the effects of, and because I think they also ran out of tear gas. And there was a short break, and you have civilians side by side at the water tank and at the tap washing there before they got back into business. That's a good sign. We've seen in the past when, rioters, I think in Kisumu, are able to push out of a ditch, that a police vehicle that had gone into a ditch, and they had to get it out just so that riot can continue. We can use those positives, because ideally, the way we look at this situation sometimes are very dysfunctional to what we want to achieve at the end of the day. Use that as a positive and say, gentlemen, what do you think? We've seen a GSU operator, I think that was in Kibera, the infamous incident where this guy stood in the middle of a crowd alone. A lone, one-man army within a crowd, and he was talking to this area. There was the dead drop silence, pin drop silence within the crowd, and he was able to talk to them and speak to them that this distraction is not what we need in the society. Okay. How can we learn, and a lot more, can we get a lot better as a society if we even use that example? So things can be done, and a lot of things can actually be achieved just by tweaking the way we look at these things. And there's a whole load, mountain of evidence that supports that psychologically, correct and fitting, impact, involvement of maybe just speech, dialogue, communication, and the psychology of crowds and things like that can actually be a lot better within the same platform of hard and soft solutions, if you may, to achieve a greater good than just extending the muzzle of the gun.
And still on that, and you were speaking about learning. Let's travel south. In South Africa, they also had their demonstrations, and even Kenyans are looking at it and they're saying, wow, these were actually peaceful. And he raises a question on Kisumu, where the demonstrators remove the truck from the ditch, and businesses, the business continues of the whole demonstrations. Is it just a culture that we do have in Kenya of maybe we just do love the demonstrations and the unrest, and we feel like if we were talking about demonstrations and at the end of the day tires were not burnt and stones were not thrown, then it wasn't a demonstration. Mm-hmm. Is it just a culture that we do have, or what's happening here?
Well, thank you. From where I sit, and I agree with my brother here, what he says, it's pretty much more of the history of what we have. Mm-hmm. By law, picketing means rather lawful assembly must not be armed. What it means by being armed probably would mean you don't having a weapon. Then we have to classify as a stone a weapon. But
that's the Public Order Act, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. So there should be a reason why the police would feel property is being destroyed, because if people are meeting or gathering together to demonstrate against something that is not good for them, it will only depend on how they are prepared, because we are a nation that has always been peaceful in the region, mm-hmm. generally speaking. But having said that, and I want to echo what my brother said here, let's not forget the welfare of the police. For instance, for myself, I come from the veterans welfare.
We'll actually come to that and speak more on welfare. Yeah.
A police officer can motivate the crowd to be rowdy or not.
Yeah.
The crowd can also make the police officer to be irritated. It is very possible. The positives you've seen, I saw something on the social media, a police officer holding a baby, mm-hmm. and an old woman cross the road. Those are small acts of kindness that we must appreciate. Yeah. It does not just look at the negative side.
Is it the language that maybe sometimes irritates the demonstrators? Maybe the language a security officer might use, and on the other hand, is it maybe the language that the demonstrators will use, or, on the side of security officers?
The police officers, I believe, they have been trained to withstand and hold back a lot more. Mm-hmm. If they were to act based on what they hear from people, then it will be a very bad situation.
Yeah.
Police are trained to restrain. For you to use force, it must be extremely important and necessary. Otherwise, you are trained not to do that. But having said that, look at it in this other way. If every police officer was to be irritated by bad words, you'll be having massacre. There are officers who are abused on the road, and they have just restrained, do nothing. I saw a video of some lady naked walking through a police vehicle, going on top of the police vehicle,
in Iceland,
lying on the vehicle, and police did nothing.
Yeah,
is now that too much irritation? It can motivate you to do anything.
Yeah.
But again, we must thank what the law has provided. Is no longer police force. It's now a police service. It's more of a service.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the president has done a very important thing to give the police service independence of their financial management. So let's allow the police to do their work by supporting them. They are meant to protect all the citizens. And like my chairman said, there is nobody who is above the law. The police, the citizens are all governed by the law.
Okay.
So the law is our anchor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chairman, let's talk about, on one end, Azimio leader Raila Odinga wants to sue Bungei and the police for the quote-unquote extreme use of force, as he puts it. And on the other hand, there is the blame game on the side of police by the Inspector General of Police, Japheth Koome, saying that you did not conduct yourself as per. Should we be having these blame games right now?
Well, I'm not the judge, I'm not the jury. Mm-hmm. But as chair of Kenya Veteran for Peace, I will stick to our mandate, and that's what I'm going to advise them.
Okay.
Or the parties. KVP is an organization of retired Kenyan Defense Forces veterans, military veterans. We are a secondary voice to complement the government on matters peace, security, and development. So our message is very clear. We can be involved actively on peace building. We can advise direct the security, the state, and the mandated constitutional organs on security, and also on development as we are in retirement but not tired. So in our approach, on both cases and in all cases, in our operational mandate on peace, security, and developmental agenda, we apply the global experience training. We also apply the regional experience training, and also we apply the local. Here is the confusion, and I'm going to start very far. This is the confusion. And the confusion is because of transition. We have a young democracy nation that is transiting from one party to multipartyism that is not fully adopted, and transition has not been complete. Here there's a case now, a nation that is transiting to Constitution of Kenya 2010, sorry.
Okay.
Here is a police force that is consisting from national Kenya police force to now National Police Service, which are two different entities, both before the law and before the Constitution. And here is a situation now where a nation is transiting from one administration to the other. So when we do our study, for us to advise is that this confusion is coming, and then we have a new police, Inspector General of Police.
Yeah.
And then we have the party leader who was declared as the fifth before ISAT. So this is the whole issue of confusion. So what we are saying is that, let me speak hope now. If there is a mere leader and the team as they allege, they will go to court, of which we advise so, and in our presser we did so. Said we are urging and advising that we are not politicians as Kenya Veteran for Peace members, but we know what is political and what is apolitical. We are not lawyers, but we know what is lawful and unlawful. We are not experts in economy, but we know what is economical and not economical. So we advise them to stick to, and it's very important for every Kenyan to know this, that A democracy is governed by the first three pillars. If a young democracy or developing democracies or civilized democracies, they stick to the first three pillars and guidelines and principles, democracy will have the space and freedom in how humanity value systems, institutions, a people, races, a nation of any country all over the world in every history. And these principles are timeless. Number one, constitutionalism. We emphasize and we affirm even today. If the Constitution allows the Azimio leader and the team to go to the court, let them go. The court to prove them who is right, and they'll be rewarded. Inspector General of Police also, they are the legal representative who also go to before the court, and they also be proved who is that wrong, and that is constitutionalism. The second principle is about the rule of law. So out of that process, the law must take its course for developed, civilized, or democracies or young democracies to have the course. The third one is strong institutions. And that is what we are saying.
Okay.
And have faith in the same constitution, rule of the law, and strong institutions.
Okay.
So if the court and the law process or the constitution will find this institution of our decorated, growing and well-doing National Police Service, as we look at the history of civilized democracies, Kenya, where we are at 60, I know the law and the constitutional mandated institutions, they will advise them how to grow, not to condemn them.
Okay.
If Azimio team will be found that they broke the law in their space of democracy, they will be advised not to be condemned, but to grow as a opposition.
Okay.
So what we are saying is that hope. Political problems are political solutions, and that's our stand. Economic problems have economic solutions, as they are, because all the issues they are raising, they are based on political, they are based on economic, they are based also on spiritual, because they're saying this administration is over exercising, over embracing spiritualism. So we are saying spiritual problems have spiritual solutions, and there is hope.
But then still on matters advising, because as Azimio leader Raila Odinga says, the next phase of the anti-government protest will be Monday and Thursday. Mondays, this past Mondays, demonstrations were just a litmus test to how maybe these demonstrations will be moving forward. How best should these demonstrations, do you feel like they should be? The conduct between, even as we wind up this particular conversation, how to mend the relationship between the police and the citizens. Because on Monday there were some arrests, and you'd find maybe some were claiming that I was arrested and I didn't do anything. You know, some boda operators, maybe some of them are from Uber, and they were just in the chaos, in the middle of it. But then how do we mend this chaos so that moving forward, maybe Monday and Thursday we don't have a repeat of what happened on Monday?
Well, that's a difficult one from where I said. But of course, all these things are founded in historical happenings, and the conduct of the police vis-a-vis the demonstrations have got to follow some kind of foundational conducts that we demand of every individual and every person that lives within the legal boundaries of this country, and essentially as a global citizen as well. Because conduct right now, as you said, interestingly, anything that you do right now in the world with the realities of globalization and socialization are not private and secretive anymore. Anything that you do is really public, and they are global in impact. And of course, of what we just discussed in terms of our rankings, and perhaps we've improved over time. Thing is, the police have been given higher responsibilities, and I began by talking about the call, the duty for which the police are mandated to deliver against our public security and order, general order, and of course the enforcement of law and order within the precincts within the borders of this country is a high reliability affair. You'd expect the police to actually have a bigger responsibility. If you are to judge this side by side with the demonstrators or the citizenry for that matter, there's always someone to take the moral high road. There's always someone to actually be the bigger person in any situation. You ask questions around provocation, you ask questions about if people are going to act on whimsicals, or people are going to act based on someone calling you a bad-looking police officer. They don't like your uniform, they may not like the way you look, skin color. There's all those things that you expect to actually happen. With those expectations have been trainings that are coined around them. And as he'd clearly stated, there's a whole lot of stuff that you go through that prepare you for the duty for which you're going to perform. We can be rowdy within this studio, but I'm pretty certain that you got journalistic training that's possibly going to moderate and control. So you've taken a higher road. When you go too low, you'll go high. The infamous saying by Michelle Obama. And that's what you'd expect of the police. So I would expect the next wave of, because the demonstrators and the party that are pretty much sponsoring, if you may, these demonstrations, have had to speak to their backyards, and they've said the demonstrations are going to go on, and we can expect with a fair share of certainty, amount of certainty that they will happen. And if it's for 2 days, you'd expect a lot to actually happen within those 2 days in terms of the ramifications on the economy and all these things. So the conduct of the security machinery, and the police are right in the middle of it, have got to actually go higher. When they go low, you go high. And what you'd expect, and generally Kenyans are a really poorly behaved society. You don't expect a level of discipline, and I'm happy I'm sat with the veteran here and individuals who know what discipline actually means. We are generally very poorly behaved, and it does not just stop at the demonstrations or among the demonstrators. It actually spreads and permeates the entire society. We drive out right now, and some of the causes of, I tell my friends, traffic in Kenya is because of human stupidity.
You feel like we need to go back to the days where, when you reach a certain point of your youth, you go to
the national youth training. I mean, we can talk about all those things. There's gains as to how just a disciplined society reaps the benefits of that discipline and the management of the whole human affairs. Look at societies like Japan. I read an article where the police in Japan sit idle for years and years on end until probably one person rocks up and sleeps while on the steering because he had one too many, and that's a huge thing in Japan. But right here we have a mother load of chaos. So if you look at it, even just those demonstrations, the police have expectations around them becoming chaotic. And to be very, very honest with even some of the things that are happening among the demonstrators, they can actually be taken advantage of by thugs. Thugs don't take a break because there's going to be demonstrations. Bad elements within the society can actually use that as a gap or a vulnerability to extend their ill-intentioned activities, and that have happened. Quite clearly. And even, of course, sabotage by other, dark forces. We've had to see individuals come out and say, when there were demonstrations, we actually brought out some old cars and we burnt them somewhere so as to lace those demonstrations and being violent and stuff like. We've had to see some of those things in this country. So with those, and as human beings that have a level of expectations and that are feeding on a lot of information and intelligence, as you'd expect of a national police service, because that's what you operate on. There's obviously real threats and there's only perceived threats, and it involves, quite a bit of intelligent, analysis and projecting that on how you see the threat profile, and then you go out there to now deal. You don't want to walk in as a professional blind into a situation and then now start to manage the chaos like firefighting. That's uncalled for. So the professional service right now as the NPS is, we'd want to expect better. We'd want them to plow in a fair share of, psychologically fitting, measures that, including what we just discussed, so that the crowd dynamics are handled better. Because if there's going to be all these kind of confrontations, an eye for an eye, we'll all be blind at the end of the day.
Okay.
So you'd expect the National Police Service to actually, go higher, manage their affairs better. If it's a capacity building, if it's training issues, if it's professionalism, because as I said, it's a very high liability affair. It's not like going off the road, corner street and selling groundnuts. The decisions that you make, if you squeeze that trigger, the decision is going to fly in excess of 800 meters per second.
And basically moving forward, we do have a better measures.
Absolutely. So,
sorry to cut short. We need to take a short break. I'll definitely be taking a look at your feedback, and we'll be finalizing on how to mend the police and citizen relationship. And obviously, speaking on that, we do have KDF veterans right here. After this short break, I want us to discuss the joint security operation in the north and to flush out bandits after the KDF troops were sent there. How effective has it been so far? Keep talking to us. You're watching Morning Cafe. We'll be right back.
Karibuni sana. This is Dr. Frankie tonight, and of course on to our first guest of the night, an amazing actress, an award-winning actress, one of the top influencers right now, a top brand ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, and a lady who I respected. Of course, I'm proud to call her my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, just listening. Are you ready for something there?
Yes.
You ready? Yeah.
Yes.
Give me something. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Kate Kamau, aka Kate, actress. How much material?
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I'm a lot.
Does it even like, is it like normal time to wear like 10 minutes? Ama like lazima uipangie.
Hii lazima shida ni kwenda kwa choo hiyo tu.
Yeah. But they come to think of it, madam you and madam of a jumpsuit. How do you guys go to the washroom? How do you guys deal with that?
That's
whole
why
thing?
we go in pairs to the bathroom.
No, men, you'll never find men going to the washroom in pairs. Ati wewe Richie ni aje. Nasikia kusojo, hebu nisikie. I think ladies are so privileged. You guys can even call each other boom, babe, sweetheart. Imagine now I'm now calling Richie. Richie babe, ni aje. Unakamjobosa ngapi na saxophone.
But we are okay with that.
Never.
Yeah.
Kate, welcome on the show. You are our first guest ever. Piga makofi. Pia tuko na interior design round hii.
Ini wajakoya ama
check relax. Usiseme na nguvu we. Nakada wana watch, nakada.
Ni sponsored.
Let me ask, have you ever tried?
No, what is that? No.
Haujawahi? Under by mistake.
But now I know it because of Wajakoya.
Oh really? So hujaipita kwa campaign ya Wajakoya by mistake ukaisikia? Have you ever tried drugs at any point?
Which one?
You're a clean,
I'm a
good
role
girl.
model.
Role model. Sawa kwa Listen, do we have enough role models in the industry anymore? Or because I've seen these days people do their own things, they mess up on social media, then they come and say, listen, I was not born to be a role model. I'm living my own life. Do you think that is the correct way to handle it?
And I think what Akothe says, I did not choose to be a role model. It's my career that inspired you to give me that title. So you cannot give me the pressure to become a role model. That's how you feel.
So
that's how you interpret my brand. But I have to live my life. I'm not telling you to live the way I live. You understand? But I know I have
to use for the demonstrations without having to destroy property. But I don't expect a lot of change. Looking at the historic demonstrations, I don't expect significant change in how the behavior is going to be. Maybe the police may have to be more careful. I remember was it 2017, when there was a swearing in, a mock swearing in, where the government provided a very large number of police officers at Uhuru Park by then, but tactically withdrew, making it very peaceful. completely peaceful. There was no demonstrations, there was no destruction of property. So I think the organizers must now change tact, looking at the lives that has been lost this past week, and this seems to be a pattern that's going to go on for some time. I think we must prevent loss of life. Life is sacred, and we have to prevent loss of life at all costs.
Okay.
Yeah.
On our SMSs right here, you can see 22047. Somebody here asks, most governments and most regimes use the police as, instruments, basically, to, okay, let me get that right. Most government regimes use the police so that they can actually settle political scores. And I feel like what he's basically asking is the police find themselves in the middle of this, just to, clear the air on this. Adera, your thoughts on this? You do see most of the unrests, police are blamed on, the political scores that are being tried to be scorned here and there.
I thought that was meant for the chairman. Yes, and that's why we speak to the independence of, the National Police Service. The Constitution expressly, provides for the independence of the, National Police Service as of now. But that is an interesting one as well, because yes, clearly is that listener and viewer has clearly said in the past, because the history really informs what happens today and what could actually be happening tomorrow. If you actually to draw a graph, we've seen a level of manipulation and lack of independence of the police. So it's better, the easiest said, but the really hard to achieve in reality. There's definitely going to be someone who's going to be wagging the tail, and there's going to be someone who's possibly going to be taking the, bearing the brunt of that manipulation. So the general, basically the good hope here that we have from where I actually said is that the police can actually exercise, total independence, and where the IG that sits right at the top of that chain is going to be someone who's absolutely professional, and of course spreading that, having that bleed out to influence the lead. As well as we do here as leaders, as commanders, and as having been officers in the army, we know how much the people that you are leading, you're commanding, the outcomes of their processes and what they actually do depend on the general orientation of the commander at the top on what you do. Psychologically, they call it emotional contagion, where your feelings, to a limited extent, where your feelings and the way your orientation gets to bleed out and affect the lead. So human beings have a form of social mirroring effect or social herding effect, and people are going to coalesce around a popular, mythology, philosophy, if you may. And so the way you do things as a commander is definitely going to. You've seen some of those things happen, even among leaders, not primarily or chiefly the National Police Service, where leaders sets the pace. If you were to see someone possibly take up arms and the people that are firing berserk into the crowd, you'd imagine what would happen among the foot soldiers that are looking at that and saying, oh, if the commander has done that, that's the right thing to do. So the general consensus around the way we deal, especially active and among crowds, and definitely when you're going out there as a National Police Service, you're not going to be a one-man army. You act within a setup. You can either be a section or a platoon strong, going by the army divisional levels. Whatever happens within that, and especially the pace that's set by the commander, will generally affect everybody else, and assuming you are this one individual that is already professional, chances are you will be influenced to act as the rest do. People don't want to stand out as the only person that's going against the grain. So when you find bad things happening, it will always escalate and get worse over time, even if you have individuals within that were thinking, maybe you could have done better. The Titanic experience was one of them where, even a few individuals would be thinking, wow, we're going to sink. But of course, the captain has said, this doesn't sink. Even if it's by God's word, Titanic will never sink. But we've seen catastrophe that happened because of disastrous patterns of human behavior. And that's what we got to actually influence with either more training, capacity building, change of mindsets. It's not about changing uniforms and possibly even equipping people. The man behind the gun is going to be the answer. So the makeup of the human resource, the material, and of course the orientations and the general feelings, resources and welfare is going to come into the equation, will influence the way humans, and of course where the NPS we are discussing here are going to become over time, and of course apply themselves to the general missions that are set before them. Not just the crowd controls and of course these demos, but for posterity we're thinking, are they going to be the people that humans, the rest of the citizens, we are going to be very happy to go to and shake hands with, like I usually do, roll my window down and say, hey crew, how are you doing? How's stuff? There's water at the back. That's the kind of relationship we'd want. And drop your hand in there and pick it. How is business? And even just that is going to be such a huge impact on just that individual that sat there alone controlling traffic.
Okay.
So all these things are about to actually be thought through very critically, and then general good behavior. As I said, my optimism is dimming on the part of just the way we are behaved as a country. We have general discipline, and it's crawling. We got to actually improve ourselves in terms of discipline and good order.
Chairman, now to you now. Let's shift gears and head to the north. And as a KDF officer, how are things, dealing with the banditry menace, in the country? Because it is something that has been there for quite a number of years. And I'm not privy if you have, dealt with it as a KDF officer. But then as a KDF officer, how are things done 20 years ago, per se? And how are things done differently now?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying information is power. And future belongs to information, knowledge, technology, peace, security and development, where we stand. And that is where we are putting both to society as a way of giving back in service out of us, active service as veterans, and also complementing the government on the same matters, trying to give them this information that the matters of security, peace, security and development, the way they were done 20 years ago, today is a very different script. And to go by also, the way things were done under the former police administration, they are very different from how the command of police now, after financial freedom and constitutional independence, was awarded by the current administration. That one should be known very clear. When you look at the three top command of police, who are now mandated by the constitution on the North Rift operations and any other operations going by, whether they are complemented by the KDF or any other service, security engines, so far, so good. What we are reporting may not rhyme with what you, the media, have, or what other Kenyans have, or other experts have. But this is the truth. The operation of the North, given the time that problem has been in the history of this nation, from the day the operation started, so far so good. And based on the current command, including yesterday input of the Deputy Inspector General, whom I know very well, Abdallah, and congratulations to him for the 14 days that he is going to be in office. And also the other Deputy Inspector General and Inspector General Kome. I know they are professional. I know the commands on the ground, both on the police line and the KDF, they are professional. What we are getting from the media, let me say like this. And this is the truth and the report that we have. We are advising. Before we throw stones to any security, peace, security, and development agents in any society, we must know this. Without the constitutional mandated security organs in place, there is no life. So, before we throw stones or condemn them, we must look away how we can build them, how we can help them grow, because if today all security mandated organs in this nation will put their tools down, we would not be here. There are no roads on the air, roads on the sea, roads on the land. There will be no humanitarian value systems. There will be no learning. There will be no family, church, faith-based organizations, corporate world. There will be no nation. There will be no past, future, and destiny and legacy.
But Chair, the residents living in the 6 affected counties, listening to them recently, and since the bandit attacks, started to rise again, and most of them were, lamenting that even after, the KDF troops landed in the 6 affected counties, and after, Professor Kithure Kindiki, who's the Interior Cabinet Secretary, gazetted areas where, the bandit hideouts are, most of these residents and some of the chiefs are saying that we haven't seen any fruits. The joint security operation is not bearing any fruits. What's happening here?
Let me say, I can prove the chiefs, and I can prove the resistance in those areas. Why? I can prove to them. So far, so good. And I can prove to have any Kenyan because they have the right of information. But remember, this is a security operation. Not all information is provided, both operational and administrative. We are living in an age that in our growing as civil young democracy, there's a need to know. And that need to know, that those people you are seeing them and hearing them complaining, they want to know every bit. But that one is impossible because in operation, you cannot, in operation of professional organs and the command right now there, they must be economical because they are meant to be economical on the information. And they are supposed to be economical on that. So we are telling and urging all those in those places, bandit-prone areas, let them be patient and wait for the constitutional mandated organs and the command of the ground to do what they can for a lasting solution on this menace. Lastly, let me say like this. As KVP, as peace security development experts in retirement, ours is to say, you cannot leave the constitutional mandated organs and systems, institutions, and humanitarian systems to handle matters peace, security, and development. Why? Is again a multi-sectoral concurrent approach on all matters, because when there is conflict, it does not affect those constitutional mandated peace, security, development organs. It affects household. So we are calling the 5 humanitarian system and institutions, and our voice is, this is not, should not be a blame game. Where there is insecurity, where there is conflict, there cannot be development. Where there is conflict, there cannot be security. So we are calling all the families, the church, faith-based organizations, the learning institutions, the government, the corporate world, and all other sectors to come together and move together, approach and fight this menace. Why? The stature of the operation that is in the north is not a Kenyan challenge alone. is banditry, guerrilla war, although that's not guerrilla war, is a challenge to any professional security experts in the local, regional, or global and historical. And that remains so until when you come together, as we are urging, we have a multi-sectoral approach. How? These bandits that we are crying of in those regions, bandit-prone regions, they are children from a family. They are children or members of a faith-based organization. They are members of an institution where there are records they went or they attended, and even they are somehow in schools, institutions. There are records in the government. There are records in the corporate world, if they are so. They are somewhere. So we have a mandate as a police and security organs do their mandate. We have a part, not a blame game, not a condemnation bomb.
Adera, still on, in the 6 affected counties, banditry-prone areas, despite this high, tight security presence in these particular areas, livestock are still being stolen. We are still witnessing, deaths, and even recently, young children. I mean, if the residents are asking, do we need a change of tact in how things are done?
Well, definitely. We need a tact. Nothing is permanent in life. The only constant in life is change, as they say. They also say that the more things change, the more they remain the same. Banditry has been a problem that's punctuated, the whole sum total of bad news in Kenya for the longest. And these are things that have happened, especially in these regions, that the North Rift and that belt, and it's been aided by a number of things. Yes, tact has got to change, because, I've been on national TV, we've had to analyze some of these things that have happened. That we had a Capedo one, and sadly we lost so many members of the National Police Service then. Yeah. We had a Capedo 2 that happened very sadly again, where a number of policemen were actually killed within that enclave. And sadly, because they seemed deserted, so to speak, there was a question of some, commander that was having, a good time elsewhere when his men were in the theater getting butchered, and spoke to a level of, among security experts, a level of lack of professionalism or good briefs. And we've seen things also flying in the social media. The fact to which the narrative, of course, that we're talking about here in terms of what we're going through today, that you cannot deny people information. When you do, they're going to find it. And when they find it, there's going to be anxiety. If you don't fill that gap with the real truth and facts as they are, there's going to be indecisive fear and a curiosity on the part of the citizenry. And you'd want to fill that gap with legit information as to how things are actually going. And I'm encouraging the actors to actually come together with the key stakeholders, including individuals within those enclaves, to actually do business better. So yes, things have got to change. But let me say this. If we are to address the perennial problem of banditry in the North Rift, and essentially all the insecurities that we are looking at, we have to think big and act global. Act local, think global. Because as we have said in different fora, some of these things that affect us, even within some isolated and very remote parts of the country, have got to have impacts elsewhere, 1 and 2, and they have contributing factors within the whole spectrum of other things happening also elsewhere. If you look at banditry, and you cannot look at banditry in isolation, you go to look at banditry with regards to the problem of proliferation of small arms and light weapons, AWs. And this is a regional problem as well, because of the way we have our borders, or share common borders with other nations, where there's war somewhere or strife somewhere, and guns get to be, there's an influx of guns or surplus availability of small arms and light weapons. And they can seep through our borders because of the way our borders are. They're actually porous, and we also have problems with the wanton corruption or runaway corruption. So you can rock up somewhere at a market center and literally you buy a gun, and that gun is going to be used as a means to, carry other activities, be it banditry or just acts of terrorism or other civil strife. Sponsor those kind of ill-intentioned activities. So unless we look at these problems with that, from that wide angle and perspective, and start to see how we can bring in all the stakeholders. Interestingly, Geneva Paper 2018 put the number, staggering, numbers of LAWs in, light weapons and assault light weapons, in the hands of people who don't need to have them at 650,000. That should worry us, that within this nation alone by 2018, the numbers could be, much, much more right now.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we are grappling with, and it cannot be resolved in a day one. And two, it cannot be resolved by, superimposing bad strategies. By bad strategies, I mean if you are going in to do disarmament programs, ensure that you are actually doing it impartially across the board. And if there's people that are going to be needing to have those weapons in their hands, they're people that are properly vetted. So you have individuals, Byron Adera and his mates here, who are going to be as professional as it can get and will perform on the day, as the Americans say. But beyond that, what we are actually, agitating for is for these people to be brought on the table with the national cake. You've heard people talk about drop big words like systemic marginalization. And yes, it's happened. This is not just a problem for this particular government. That's a problem that happened, that has been carried forward from the government since, the independence. And where, if you and I were to go to this place, say called Capedo today, just on a tour, drive or probably get flown, get dropped there. You could possibly die or survive, but you possibly die just by the hardships there. The temperatures are soaring and the environment is crazy. The fires all over the place. And you imagine people actually living in that environment. And then if you were to be taken back in time and you are a child, you and I, you have to walk tens of kilometers to actually go to school, and you doing that by dodging wild animals, and there's some raid that's happened kilometers away, and people are passing with livestock running with the speed of 1,000 gazelles. And that is the plight of the individuals right there. So if you're thinking you're going to deal with a problem, it could be nice for us to have a look at the root causes of these problems and have a vast array of other measures, soft measures that will bring these people to the table where the national case is being shared. So infrastructural developments, have a feel, have them feel that the government is with us.
Then on the government side, they'd say, for example, the LAPSET project, they'd have it there, but then the suspected bandits would come and raid these particular projects and even kill the workers. We've seen previously in the recent past, some of these bandits would actually come and kill the workers on the roads, or even attack these particular projects. So again,
the we're actually speaking to the problem that we are discussing here, and that's terrorism. I mean, this is the Al-Shabaab, the problem that's had to live for the longest and have been in the theater itself fighting the Mujahideen. And interesting, I was in Mount Elgon, among the first operators that were in that mountain to deal with the Sabaot Land Defense Forces, and it was an operation that you can say was very successful. Living in that jungle for the longest wasn't easy. Of course, we lost an operator, sad for me, God rest his soul, in eternal peace. But you're happy, starting to see people, women getting raped, and people getting their ears cut and mouths cut, and there was all these things, illegal taxation, and those were Kenyans. So it had gone really, across the red line. Like you can say the banditry. Because yes, there may be valid concerns, but we are thinking and we are saying here, you don't need to die or be killed by me because I'm thinking I have the monopoly of having all the funds in my hands. Like it's happening right now, probably in the streets. Those could be bandits by different names, probably, right? So what we are saying here is, let's have a look at the root causes of all these problems and analyze them situationally. The plight of the individuals within that space are thinking, well, this is our valid concern. These people, this development is going to improve their lives. And the Mujahideen is sat somewhere and thinking, oh, And as they say, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So the problem that is there, and we are speaking to the whole narrative of the families that are living there, the children are getting born into that narrative and are saying, yes, there's no alternative. We don't have schools, so what's there for us? It's cows, and for them, cows are sacred. So we have to look at this problem by saying, hey, which one better narratives can we actually spread? We have to build schools, and people can go to schools and change their mindsets. We have to tell them that, you guys can actually get employed. Some of you sharpshooters, we are happy with what's going on here. So someone can say, it's a bad situation, there's always a silver lining in any cloud. And they say, why not recruit them impartially, without asking them to sell all their cows so that they got to have a bit of money to bribe their way into the either army or national police service. So if we all get better in terms of just good order behavior as a society, and where you have equal opportunities as I am, you can pretty much look at that and say, well, there's so much potential in this area. These guys can get, and you guys are looking like this, you can actually get this opportunity, you can get that opportunity, but you can also come in with goodies and say, there's a health institution, there's also here. By the way, you have an army camp there. We have a police, station right there. We've got boreholes. This is a perennial problem. By the way, cows don't need to actually, good enough livestock, but more productive ways of raising livestock. We have this dam, and you guys can actually do agriculture, and can, have this and that, because those are some of the sources of conflict. Global change, or in terms of global climate change, about to affect this area for Kenya and perhaps the whole world right now. And those arid and semi-arid areas are actually worst hit. So we can be sat here, aircon, rooms and swinging chairs, but someone half a world away, doesn't have those, amenities. If anything, it's basic survival for them. So when you go into some of these situations, the operational commands, operational orders are got to be informed by a whole load of thinking processes that have got to include all these things. And you're thinking, yes, balance the hard approaches with the whole benefit of other long-term soft approaches for, lasting solutions that... And
speak about the whole, approaches. Secretary, as a KDF, as an ex-KDF officer, when you, approach these particular banditry-prone areas, because most of the residents here were saying, and the leaders were saying, you will need to involve the wazee wa vijiji. You need to involve the residents, the National Police Service, who understand the terrain better. Do the KDF do this? Enlighten us on this.
You need to take a correction. When you say X, I'm here as a director for KVP. It's important. I agree with my brother here, what he's put across. We have what you call ADR, the Alternative Dispute Resolutions. Other ways that you can achieve the same thing without having to go into war. The problem of the North is not necessarily what is being perceived, and like the chairman said, there is very little information that you can share in public. And we don't expect that, because now KDF has joined the force, and you can see from the Gazette number 34 by the Minister of Defense this year, when he said it's a joint effort. It's a multi-agency team. It's not a KDF only or National Police only, or it's a joint team.
Indeed.
A Kenyan ordinarily seeing somebody in a combat would want to imagine that now that KDF have come, there'll be immediate results, what they watch in a movie. It doesn't work that way. From where I sit, on arrival into any site or a scene, you've got to study, you've got to infiltrate the enemy, probably identify the intelligence areas that you're going to use to get your intel before you can act. So it's too soon to judge and say maybe they haven't done well. But like you said, alternative dispute resolution would mean what my brother is saying. How do these people live? You've heard these scenarios where somebody says, how is Kenya? Because they believe they're not in Kenya. This is overtime. Some even read newspapers after a week or even two. What you read today, I'm sure Nairobi, they will read the paper for tomorrow at 8 p.m. We'll be having the following day's newspaper. The other side is the opposite. When it's breaking news in Nairobi, it doesn't break in those parts of the world.
It's broken.
It's broken. Takes time. So there has to be inclusivity, and I think the law is very clear on this. When devolution came in place, those counties have been taken care of. The 6 counties, they have a share of the national cake. Then the county governments must deliberately make decisions that they must work with the national government to resolve this. Because you've heard of cases and allegations where they say this banditry has been linked to some politicians. That is very sad, extremely sad, because then it beats the logic why we are complaining. That means there is somebody benefiting from the whole mess. So we can't judge, but we are saying the national government with the county government must deliberately decide to end this, because I do not think that there are so many people who are doing banditry. I believe it's just a pocket of people who have been encouraged by somebody, or they have some comfort of some sort, which encourages them to look like they're causing mayhem. What I would say, they are the sayers who are very comfortable with this order. Order is not everybody's happiness. As you know, just like we talk about the conflict that's happening with the protests. When there's a demonstration, there's somebody who benefits. There's somebody who wakes up and says, I think today I need to get some television.
True.
Today's demonstration as a target. So we were saying the county governments of those 6 counties, the national government must deliberately decide to change the method of how they are going to solve this. Look at how the schools are being developed. Look at how the food security. Because why would somebody steal cows? Maybe. Why would you steal cows? Are you going to eat them? Or is it the meat you are eating here in Kilimani?
Yeah.
We don't know about that. So there has to be, we must be clear. And we cannot put all the efforts to the national government. It has to be individual. Even the citizens who are in that part of the country must also look at it in a more objective way.
Okay.
Because the image of the country in the north appears like they are not Kenyans. If you take a picture from the north of Kenya, you post in Amsterdam, they will say Kenya is a very dry country.
Yeah.
So the perception is everything.
Yeah.
Let us not market those areas as very isolated areas. They are part of Kenya. They are Kenyans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair, let's get into the welfare of the police and generally the security operators who are sent and deployed to the north and most of this banditry prone areas. How best should the government, on your end as as an advisory team, how best should the government deal on matters the welfare of these security operators?
Well, every operation of the stature of what is going on the 6 banditry-prone regions or counties, there are laws and rules that govern. There are even orders, and there are structures which are involved. First of all, as Kenyans who are watching and the audience, let us separate the truth and the facts. As I said, the command of police now and the commanders on the ground of the joint operations, they have not complained of the warfare, and I don't think whether it will be. Why? I said now, any nation, and where Kenya is, whole efforts, resources are committed to that operation. Why? The government and any government in the world, region or local, should do so because that's the best practice for the way forward. So the welfare of those who are in operations is not an isolated case. It's being taken care of. So the stories that we are hearing from the social media and all those things, I can say they are propagandas. they are unascertained truth or facts. So far so good, as I said.
So basically, the welfare of the police and even the joint security operators that were sent there, for them the welfare is as good so far, according to you?
Not according to me.
Okay.
Where we stand as KVP.
Okay.
Is there. And if we see there is anything of which you don't project, we will advise the appropriate superior authority. But so far so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the disarmament process, and this is one particular issue that the government is, trying to push and ensure that the disarmament process is actually done. How best should the kind of language that the security operators now to the bandits? How best, even to those who own guns, how best should this be done effectively?
I will speak because we were very much informed in 2007, 2008, when KVP was formed. I will not speak of what the government is doing on the disarmament program. 2010, we did the first study and survey on the harms, of course with some stakeholders and UN involved. There is no any other study that we have done or survey. And we got that the report that is there now within our records, over 600,000 harms, which are illegal, both small and light weapons. We have used what we call smart programs. Many people don't know that we are the brainchild of this we call border sector, and it's good to know that we used what we call smart programs. Those who were involved, we started with those who were being involved in 2007, 2008 in those activities, perpetrators. We just had an operation after being commissioned by Kofi Annan, His Excellency, and may his soul rest in peace. We went like over 3,000 veterans. We did what we call smart programs. We get them, those who were involved, and actually they told us that after burning a home, they were given 10,000 shillings. Sad story. When they bring a head of a human being, they were given 5,000 shillings. So basically we could know what is the root of this. So what we did, we called stakeholders, well-wishers, sponsors and donors. They gave us motorbikes. So we commissioned them. We told them, we request and urge them, you go and bring a gun, leave this issue of operating illegally under the Constitution because you are not safe and you're not protected. Get a motorbike, work for your family, and of course relocate. We did what we call conflict reformation, not conflict resolution, and it worked. That's why we see, although there are so many border operators on the board, that we have also used a faith-based organizational approach to reform them, to speak to them. We have used what we call civic education on telling them the dangers. But of course, the dynamics vary from where these guns are domiciles, where these illicit and light weapons and firearms are domiciled. We have different challenges which lead to this. For example, in Northeastern, there are challenges. There are causes and the reasons as to why they are hoarding them. The reasons and the cause which are making Nairobians, for example, to hoard guns is different from Mombasa, and is different from North Rift. So we use different approach. And I believe because also we cooperate together with the state, non-state actors, we also cooperate with the stakeholders, bringing them on board. We believe the constitutional mandated organs, and I repeat again, they are using their own approach, but about all things, we don't compete, we complement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adira, still on the whole disarmament process.
Yes.
Again, and still on the whole, same question. How effective should this process be done so that maybe in the future we actually see more disarmament actually happening?
Well, as I said, when there was a different question, but generally on the same drift, is that it's got to be done impartially, so that the whole exercise inspires optimism on the part of. Happy that the chair here and the study that they did, dated as it is in 2010, has a wealth of information that is really rich, that can inform the way things can actually be done. Even today, if we are talking about conflict reformation, as you said, the chair, that is absolutely rich. That's something that personally I didn't know that it's been done by the vets, and thanks to their efforts back in the day. That is huge. And to find that retired, army officers, the veterans, undertook this process, it inspires a lot of confidence on the part of the other actors, the key stakeholders, that the citizenry. They are seeing them as people who have come into this equation with good intentions. Chances are when the government goes to a place and extends its arm through, say, the NPS or the army, there's always that feeling of, guys don't feel very excited because of the past experiences that have had to happen over time. And life is the continuity.
Yeah.
In a child born in a family is basically just going to be influenced by the people around them. It's the environment that's going to shape their ideas. It's nature and nurture. And so a child of, say, a bandit, if you may, it's definitely going to grow up just knowing whatever happens and shapes their whole world view. And so they become what they are, shaped by the environment around them. And quite factually so we are, we see the world as we are, not as it is. A journalist, if a question is posed to you and I, and it's one question, our answers are going to be different. Even if it's the shape of this cup, you're going to say, oh, that's TV47. But I'm going to say it's a cup that's made of this and that. It's going to be different. And that's how that's the way they see their world. So if you have this other softer approaches, people become more amenable to it. If someone is going to ask them, dressed in uniform, looking gang, and saying, we've given you 2 days, an amnesty to bring your guns, people are going to view that with a bit of suspicion, and they're going to be going, oh, fine. Instead of taking this gun to them and possibly going to get arrested and spend the whole time in jail, and my friend is going to suffer, they will hide it. And as I said, you're looking at this situation side by side with the dynamics in that place, but the borders are porous. They'll go across the borders.
Yeah.
And, factually in Kenya, we have communities that are within this country, and we have the same. There's Luos in Uganda and Ethiopia, there's Pokots here, and they're across the borders in Uganda. And so it's really easy, and you got relatives across. I remember when we were working, in the Somali conflict, and we have families that didn't literally know that this is a border. For them, they got a family here, they got wives across, and they keep popping back and forth between the common borders. And that's normal to them. So to be very decisive with the way the disarmament has got to be done, all these things have got to be taken care of. And of course now addressing the root causes of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, as you said. Their paper put it at over 600, Geneva paper 218 put it at 650,000.
Yeah.
So that's really a staggering number. Right now, as I said, closer to 2018, it could be more, because we've had conflicts in the region. We've had the arms race in the global spectrum is really crazy. So you'd expect that to be more. But the more deeper question would be, human existence is about survival. And knowledge to any conscious organism is a means for survival. For them, every is, as the saying goes, implies an ought. So if my survival is going to be based on keeping cows or raiding my neighbors or cows that they have, because that's the means of survival from where they're sitting, then the ought is, I ought to buy guns. I got to acquire guns. I got to train in guns. I got nothing else. As he said, there's all these things that are missing in that equation. So say school, say a superior narrative, say the presence of government so that they have a feeling that they come in security around us. Say equitable distribution of the national cake, and of course availability of all these things that we enjoy here. If it's available to them, you can shape that narrative. And then the full buy-in. the exercise has got to include all these other actors. The citizenry in that space, the opinion shapers in that space, the leaders, and my general dissatisfaction with the people that we call leaders in this nation is shared with other people that are about to speak to even privately.
Yeah.
That the people we call leaders are the people whose names keep popping up when we are talking about even this problem of banditry and the way it's been commercialized. We've seen people being arrested and being charged with this and that. They're financing this, they're benefiting from this and that. And of course, as you said, the meat that you could be having today during lunch could very possibly be, from the bandit-prone areas. And so we got to ask ourselves, even as much as we are having a good meal of stew here in Nairobi, that could this be? And those are the questions that were asked by the former president. And curiously, the army was actually put in charge of the Kenya Meat Commission, and the reasons were valid. Because the army is going to ask you questions. You're not just going to be supplying cows. They'll ask, do we have a horn, for instance, to this cow? Where it is skinned? Because someone, a good person would brand their cows. You want to have them with identifiable signs, and they could only be in the horns. We don't eat horns or hooves or perhaps skin. And those are questions that the KMC are well and good. We want to do business. But fine, let us know. And so the army would have those cows, they're supplied, and they got a bench, and a desk where people would come and they don't, slaughter them immediately. And they say, let's give it a fallow period of 2 weeks, just in case someone comes and puts in a complaint. And that in itself, just that alone, addressed the problem of banditry half a world away. Because we know that 1,000 cows that are raided, as we've had, or 150 goats, or 200, and someone has died in some space, in Samburu, in Pokot, in Turkana. They will travel through space. Even if they were sprinting with the speed of 1,000 gazelles, literally they'll pass through some space, and someone ought to see them and say, oh, they're in that other village. And that's the kind of intelligence that the army and all the other actors in that field are looking for. And they're saying, oh, fine, we know there was a raid in that space. Where could they have gone to? Because it barricaded roads, and where could they have gone to? That's part of the process of addressing that problem. And once we identify and single out, and that's intelligence, basically what you're talking about here, to inform operational infrastructure and of course the way business is going to be done to address that problem. So once that is done, the army is asking critical questions, going like, well, now we know how this is done. These are the actors. So let them and meet relevant justice. But the other people that are remaining and are looking at this question encourage that full buy-in. The religious leaders, the leaders in that particular enclave, all the other actors, non-governmental. You may want to have them be given, white handkerchiefs, figuratively speaking, and they approach the people and they preach lasting peace and dissolution between these warring communities. And as I keep saying, and as Margaret Whitley did say, when we seek for connections, we restore the earth to allness. Our seemingly separate lives become more meaningful when we get to realize how necessary we are to each other. The Pokots enjoy a lot of necessity with the other tribes, the Turkanas and the other tribes that are living in those areas. We become, good neighbors over time. What's gotten into the equation is divisiveness in terms of, bad politics, let's say, and where people are capitalizing on numbers. So if I ensure that half of your population is gone out of this, so I'll become an MCA or I'll become an MP. And so people, the bad behavior I'm talking about here, have taken advantage of some of these things, even the ills happening in the society, and they're benefiting from them. So that's the whole sum total of the intelligence that informs some of these actions. I sure wish that once we have that on the table, we are able to craft relevant and long-lasting strategies that will ensure that we not only applying band-aids or aspirin solutions, but we are looking at curing the problem with a diagnostic undertaking of getting to address, understand the root causes and slap relevant solutions on them.
Terry, as we wind up this particular conversation, let's talk about the wheels of justice. And some leaders have raised the issue of having specialized courts so that, for the sentencing of the bandits who will be arrested, and have so that we can ensure the wheels of justice and are actually achieved. Your thoughts on this?
Just before that, I want to add something of what he said, which could help in the question you're asking. These bandits are just Kenyans. They are normal human beings like you and me. The only difference, when they are born in a very different environment. They are not taken to Aga Khan or Kenyatta, where you are going to have a nursing, some baby milk. No, they are born in very difficult situations. At the age of 2, they see their parents with weapons every day. That is their image. They don't go to school. If they have to go to school, I don't know how they go to school. It's a very native mankind kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Now, you want to arrest this person, take him to court or to prison, hoping maybe there could be justice.
Yeah.
This person, I don't think he or she cares. I've heard of clips on social media where somebody says, I think the government should allow us to pigane kidogo. Ndio wajue wapo court with other ones. You see, that's a very bad perception. This person is talking to you, he's having an AK-47.
And insightful statements.
And very insightful statements, and he's ready. He's saying, I mean, let's fight. If we fight and we defeat them, we'll be peaceful. That is how they are perceiving everything. So even as there is a specialized, maybe courts or whatever it is they want to put across, I think it's more useful if it's going to be given a humanitarian face. Actual solid solutions, because taking people to court will just be a cost to the government.
Okay.
You have to feed the person as a prisoner and make sure he's healthy. If he dies, it's also a problem. So you better integrate these people in the society. Can we have a group of people, young people coming from these bandit-prone areas, being taken to Mombasa to see how people live? Because their perception in life since they are born is not the same as the other youths who are thinking about technology, information, and other things. So there has to be that integration of these people from the bandit-prone areas and the other parts of the country.
Okay.
That is very important. In itself, it will be a solution. Having a special case, a special court will just be isolating them further. So this is now the court for the bandits. It's like the case which I was seeing somewhere, they say the motorbike, nowadays they have their own special ward in the hospitals because they are known that they are very reckless. This is not a very good behavior.
Yeah.
It's not a good behavior. So there has to be,
okay.
Yeah, so it has to be, as I finish up, it has to be an integration.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the next 30 seconds, so that I can have your last words, gentlemen, 30 seconds each, your final words on matters, the Kenya's security patterns and the way to move forward.
Okay. For the parting shot, I request the Kenyans to maintain peace. We need each other. We are all Kenyans. We should take care of each other and consider tomorrow and our children. When they see violence, they adopt violence.
Thank you. Adira, your 30 seconds.
Moral rearmament is a word that's been spoken for quite some time. We need to go back to the basics and have a credible, critical, and honest look inwards at ourselves and say, where did the ball drop?
Okay.
Peace, security, discipline, all of these are not a zero-sum game. We can all enjoy peace, security, and moral uprightness at the same time without anyone hurting.
Okay.
And that's what Kenyans should actually do.
Thank you. Chair, briefly, your parting shots.
Thank you. I'm calling all Kenyans and urging them from all institutions, from all languages and tongues, from every community to embrace this. As KVP, we are urging and adding our voice that matters security, matters peace, security, and development, whatever you are, needs a concrete multi-sectoral approach and action.
Okay.
Because failure is the deficiency on action, on the constitutionalism, rule of law, policies within the strong institutions that you have, and the decisions and the choices you made. So let's take approach as Kenyans and let pursue peace with all men, because the more we threaten peace, the less we bleed in war.
All right.
There is hope at the end of the tunnel.
All right, thank you very much, Robert Mbuko, who is the chair for the Kenya Veterans for Peace, and Byron Adera, pioneer of the ex-Special Forces. Remember, he was asking, why did you leave the military? I feel like that, because of time, we'll have that later on. Yeah, and also security expert, and Dr. Nelson Chisera, who's the executive director for the Kenya Veterans for Peace. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your powerful insights, and I believe Kenyans have quite learned a lot, and I personally have learned a lot. And thank you, viewers, for your feedback. Because of time, I won't take a look at that, but then we'll obviously be having